welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of an Evolved Review. As always, I'm your host, James Caleb Kitchens. I'm joined each and every week by my co-host, none other than Caleb Stovall. What's going on, man?
What's going on, man? I'm excited to talk about this one today, man.
I am too. And before we get into that, I just got to warn everybody. I'm kind of on my bullshit tonight. You're getting 100% unadulterated James Kitchens here tonight. So
why is that?
I've had a long day and I'm just on it, man. I'm just on it. That's how it is. One of the things I want to address real quick, we talk about the name of the show, right? Like it's called an Evolved Review, right? And the reason for that, number one, I'm James Caleb Kitchens, right? I've done every job you can do in wrestling over the last 17 years. Wow. Let me go get my walker. And go ahead and check into the nursing home. Yeah. So done pretty much every job imaginable you can do in wrestling over the last 17 years, and then you yourself are not only the voice of Viral Pro Wrestling there at the commentary desk, but you consume. We got to say it every episode. You consume more wrestling content than any living being in the multiverse.
Yeah,
including other versions of yourself in different multiverses.
Exactly. But and to be fair though, I've also been behind the scenes as well.
That's it. You've trained in wrestling. You trained WWA 4, as a matter of fact.
Yes.
So, I mean, here we are. It's an Evolved Review. We're going to give our opinion. We're going to talk about the shit we're up to. We're going to do what we do. So let's do that. I know you want to talk about something. I know I want to talk about something too. MLW debuting on Vice.
Yes.
Some of the biggest news. Yes. I mean, I think it's arguably the biggest news in the independent scene because, make no mistake, every indie company out there will be very quick to say, "Oh, we're on IWTV. It's the biggest thing in the world." Let me tell you, nobody's. We're not even 3 minutes into the episode. I'm gonna get myself in trouble. No one is making any money on IWTV. I'm just gonna put that out there. No one's making any. I'm not even gonna go into the unless. Somebody will make a long post or a rebuttal to it, whatever they want to do. Nobody's making any fucking money on IWTV. They're just not. They're just not. Anyway, MLW though, on Vice, there's going to be some money in that. That's the home of Dark Side of the Ring. We all know this. This is a huge deal. What did you think about it?
Well, first of all, you know how much I've been following MLW. Like I follow them probably about as much as I follow like ROH and stuff like that. And I've been rooting for MLW for a while. I think that they have a very unique product. I like the way that they present it. They present it as like a hybrid style is what they say. Like MLW is a hybrid wrestling, that means they have a mix of everything. You have MMA people, you have lucha wrestling, you have hardcore wrestling, you have just pure amateur wrestlers and stuff like that. Basically saying that you're going to see any type of matchup and stuff like that. And I like the way that they do their title belts. It feels kind of like ROH in a way where it's almost that UFC sports type presentation and stuff like that. But at the same time, MLW to me is kind of like Nitro was in 96 and 97, if that makes any sense, where you had a mix of, you had the lucha libre, the high flying stuff. You had professional wrestling as it was back in the, Crockett days and everything. And then you had the entertainment aspect from like the NWO and Crow Sting and even Goldberg and stuff like that. So that's kind of what like MLW has always been to me. And I've been rooting for them. In fact, I root for any professional like wrestling to get on that type of level. And what I mean by that is a lot more people are going to see this. Right. They were just really doing YouTube and they were just doing Fusion. But here it's like now you're on Vice, the same place that Dark Side of the Ring is. And Dark Side of the Ring, for anyone keeping track at home, is the highest rated show on Vice. It has been proven. It is their highest rated show. So a wrestling show is their highest rated show. So they thought, hey, let's go out and actually get a wrestling promotion. And, you know, obviously AEW's TNT and Turner Network right now. And the WWE is Peacock and Fox and stuff like that. So they're not going to go for any of those. But MLW, they're like, hey, they're a pretty well-known organization and stuff like that. So let's get that one. I think this is going to be nothing but good for MLW. It's going to make talent come over there, because now they're like, hey, you know, I could do a regular indie date and stuff like that, or I could go to this place that actually has TV.
And it's not only that it's the highest rated show on Vice. There are a lot of episodes of Dark Side of the Ring, especially in season 2, that have way better ratings than Raw, SmackDown, Dynamite. Like, I mean, people that don't watch the weekly product like myself are flocking to Vice as soon as Dark Side of the Ring is there. So this is a home run for MLW. I hope they signed a good deal. I hope that it works out for all parties and it's really good. And you know, this is going to make them a, pun intended, major player in the wrestling world. So it's going to be a big deal.
And you know, here's the thing, like back in the 90s, we as wrestling fans, our wrestling boom pretty much was, you know, WCW versus WWE. And then you had ECW, where it was like you could make a little bit of money, not much, you know, pretty much indie pay and whatnot. But they were the third biggest wrestling promotion. And people are like, oh, are we ever going to get the Monday Night Wars? Are we ever going to get the wrestling war and everything like that? Well, I've always been under the impression that it's like, why does there have to be just two companies? There are not just two movie productions. There's
right.
separate.
And the Monday Night War is never coming back. I mean, it's just not, because the thing is, you look at that million that Dynamite's doing, you look at whatever, 1.5 million or 2 million or whatever that Raw or SmackDown or whatever is doing, whatever they're doing now. These are the same people. It's not Raw's doing 5 million and Dynamite's on the same night doing 5 million. The wrestling fan base is like a tenth of what it was in the 90s, if not less. Nobody really. I'm gonna be frank here. I think at least half of the people that are watching those products on a regular basis, I'm talking with my hands a lot tonight, folks. I don't think they enjoy them. I think a lot of people hate watch wrestling now. I think people watch it and they mystery science theater it. They sit there and talk shit about it the whole time. And I can't do that. That's why I don't watch any of the weekly products. But I don't want to go off on that tangent. I'm excited for MLW. I love a show that has variety on it. I've said this a million times. A wrestling show should have something for everybody. You should have a match where somebody's going to get hit over the head with a preferably really hard object. You should have a match where there's going to be some technical expertise. You should have a match where there's going to be some high flying. You should have a match where it's going to be fisticuffs. You should have men's matches. You should have women's matches. You should have something for everyone. And I think that is a great way to build a wrestling product. I don't think anybody that's on TV right now is doing that adequately. So if MLW can do what they're doing and continue to step that up, I think sky's the limit.
Yeah, and I, like you said, I'm very excited for it. But I think also too, in order to be a successful wrestling promotion, you have to do things that make you stand out from even WWE and AEW.
Absolutely.
And stuff like that. Like, you know, that's why I've always been such a fan of Ring of Honor, because when you watch their product, it's like when I watch Ring of Honor, I know I'm watching Ring of Honor. Like they're the only place that operates like that pretty much on television and for a wrestling promotion and stuff like that. MLW is kind of the same way. I mean, MLW to me, like I said, it's like a mix of the 90s and the ruthless aggression era and stuff like that. And if you go and you watch their stuff on YouTube, They have MLW Underground, which was, I guess, when they first started and stuff like that, where like Joey Styles is the commentator and stuff like that. It's pretty much exactly like ECW.
Right.
Really.
Yeah.
Like
it had that feel to it.
Yeah, it would basically be if ECW had survived, kind of thing. You know?
Right. Yeah, it's a much more modern take on that. Speaking of Vice, moving on, we do finally have the full episode list for Dark Side of the Ring. We've been talking about this for a long time. We've kind of been revealing the breadcrumbs as they're given to us. But we now know that the season is, as I said on our last episode, it's going to be split in half. And so we have the episodes here. I'm going to read them off. So we have a 2-hour premiere about Brian Pillman. I am stoked about that, that they're going to give him 2 hours. I think he is probably the guy on this list that is probably the right mix of famous, but also not a lot of people know the whole story. So he's going to be in the premiere. Just going to be 2 episodes. We're going to get WCW New Japan Collision in Korea. We're going to get
can't wait for that one.
I can't wait for that one either. Here's one I'm telling you that is going to rock the planet, and that's the Nick Gage episode.
Yeah, I didn't realize this, but apparently he's quite the character. Like is he basically like this season's New Jack?
Yeah. If there's anybody on this list that's going to be that's going to be a New Jack, it's definitely this guy. He robbed a bank and has been to prison. So
yeah, that's what I hear. And then Moxley is even interviewed in that one.
Yeah, as he should be. Yeah. Nick Gage is he's been kind of all over the indies to like most of the biggest places on the indies. So yeah, that's gonna be interesting.
That's gonna be good.
Ultimate Warrior, probably the most famous person on the list. He's gonna have his own episode. It'll be interesting to see what they can say about him that hasn't been said, both in the Rise and Fall of Ultimate Warrior documentary, and then also the later WWE documentaries after he made good with everyone.
Yeah, and I believe his wife is in this documentary, obviously, and she works for WWE, or last I checked, she did. I don't know if she does anymore, but
yeah, it's interesting. Grizzly Smith and Family, which it's weird that they're releasing that as the title of the episode because, of course, the most famous person in that episode is definitely Jake the Snake Roberts.
Yeah.
And then the Dynamite Kid. That's going to round out the first half of the season.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah. I'm excited about that.
Yeah. But then the second half of the season, though, and I had to wait for these to be confirmed because at first, like, I didn't see them on like the original trailer, so I was kind of like, oh, wait a minute, I hope these are still on there, but they are.
Yeah, they definitely confirmed the second season. We've got the WWE steroid trials. That's going to be interesting. We've got FMW. We've got Luna Vachon. We have the plane ride from hell from WWE, and this is the episode I'm most looking forward to out of the whole season, I think.
Really?
Because this is not only is it star-studded, right? It's got the most famous kind of cast, I think, because you got Kurt Angle, Ric Flair, Vince McMahon. I mean, obviously they're not going to get all those people to do the interviews for it. Vince McMahon certainly isn't gonna, but it will be very interesting to see how this unfolds. Hopefully they get Mick Foley to talk about it. XPW is on that list for the second half. Johnny,
and real quick, if I could, I was reading the descriptions of that on like one of the wrestling websites, and from what I am reading, I didn't realize just how bad that promotion is. If what I read is like true, like we're talking like mobster type shit.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be rough.
Like I was just like, holy shit! I can't wait to see it. Like,
it's gonna be rough. Johnny
Yeah.
K9, aka Bruiser Bedlam, is going to be on there, and then last but not least, we have Chris Canyon, which I think that episode is going to be really, really sad. I think this
Yeah.
season they're looking to make it not as dark of a side of the ring as season two, because season two was rough, and I do mean rough. So
Yeah. And I think season 2 was so rough because obviously like they did not know if they were going to get picked up for a third season. They didn't know like if Vice was,
right,
going to put in the same time and effort to the show and everything like that.
they went all out.
Like, yeah. So they were just like, you know what? Let's just go all out. Let's do the ones that we know everyone wants to see and everything. And if it's our last one, then we're going to go out like this, swinging basically. So the first one they started off with is they're like, hey, season opener, Chris Benoit, right off the bat.
and then they closed out with Owen Hart. So
exactly. And it's kind of like this one, it's like, hey, Brian Pillman. Hey, very end, Chris Canyon. Great.
Yeah, and we don't know if he's gonna be the last episode or not, but we'll see.
Well, true.
Anyway, we're of course gonna cover every last one of these. This is all coming up later on this year, starting in May. That being said, I want to say one more thing before we get into the main event tonight. I want to thank our friends over at Tapped Out Wrestling Podcast. They aired the Steve Austin episode on their network, and they're going to do that. Yeah, they're going to do that with these. They have a massive reach over there. So I really appreciate that. If you're watching it here, if you are watching this on Tapped Out Wrestling Network, by all means, give those guys a shout out. Let them know that you came here to see this video, and let them know what you think of our review. Tonight, of course, if you clicked on this, you already know that, or you just randomly click on shit without reading it. This is going to be the review of the A&E Biography Legends series. This is the Roddy Piper episode. What an episode that this was. Emotional roller coaster. I'd say out of all of them, this one had me feeling incredibly overjoyed at parts. It told me things that I didn't already know at certain places, and at certain parts it had me nearly in tears. So I think it was a fantastic episode. I think if he was here, he would be proud of it. What did you think about this one, just overall?
Overall, man, I gotta say that out of a lot of documentaries over the years with WWE involved in it and stuff like that, this has got to be the best one that they've ever. To me, this is the best one I have ever seen from them. And I know we're going to talk about the Booker T, and we talked about Austin and stuff like that, but dude, I was glued to this. This was it was so good from start to finish. Even with Bruce Pritchard being in it and Vince McMahon and stuff like that, it was really good. And to me, I didn't see a lot of bullshit. Like I don't know. There was some I could see, but overall, I thought everyone was just very honest.
I thought they were very straightforward.
Yeah, I really did. I thought everyone was very straightforward. I will say this too. Roddy Piper's daughter, and I can't remember her name right off the top of my head. I wish I wrote it down, but if they do like a movie on this, like they're gonna do for Hogan, I know who should play his daughter, Emma Stone. Because literally, I sat there and watched this. I was like, she could be a stunt double for Emma Stone. Like, I was like, holy shit! Like, she looks and sounds like her. So if they ever do a movie of Roddy Piper and they use like family members and stuff like that, please just Emma Stone be her.
So are you talking about Teal, or the other one?
I think she's the younger one.
Gotcha.
I'm not sure. I can't remember. She's the first one that you see.
Okay. Yeah, I don't 100% remember their names, which is awful of me. But Teal wrestled at AEW at All Out.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's fantastic, is what it
Why has
is.
he not wrestled since?
I'm not really sure. That's maybe a whole nother story. But I loved that they didn't. This didn't feel like it had that WWE. We've got the blinders on. We didn't have that from this. We didn't have, hey, over here there's all this stuff in his early life that we don't want to talk about. It's got to be sunshine and rainbows.
Yeah.
And it's got to tell the story that we want to tell. I didn't get that at all, and I'm glad you brought it up. They talked about his early life, about how he robbed people. He was surviving on the streets, man. He was going from halfway houses and homeless shelters, and paying $5, to stay somewhere for the night that he had to go scrounge up. He's playing his bagpipes to get money. He didn't never felt at home with his family and left at a very early age. He admitted that he robbed people for money. And it's a miracle really that he ended up trying out professional wrestling. It really is, because if not, there's no, he says it himself. He said if not for that, then he probably would be dead. You know, because he would
Yeah.
have continued that life out on the streets.
Yeah. He definitely wouldn't have had the career that he had. He wouldn't have the life that he had. It sounded like he had a really, really rough childhood, and a lot of things that I didn't know that. I really didn't. I did not know anything about Piper during his childhood and stuff like that. So that was all news to me, and it was that was kind of hard to hear. I was like, damn, like I didn't realize all of that. So him definitely, like, him having to rob people and stuff like that. If someone found out about that, he'd be on cancel culture to like today, basically.
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot in his early life. You could tell kind of later in his life too that he had been through some shit. I mean, it just, you could just see it in his eyes, man, and the way he talked about things. That the HBO interview they talked about from 2003, I believe it was,
Yeah.
which where he just kind of went off the rails. When I remember when the movie The Wrestler came out, there was a pretty lengthy interview with him about The Wrestler, where some people actually thought that that was based on his life, and he said, no, it's not really my story, but in a way it is. You could tell that there was a lot of parallels that he drew to with that movie, with his own life. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of people in the wrestling business did.
Yeah.
I love how he kind of got his start in the business. We talk a lot about people like, Shawn Michaels being a smaller guy and kind of making his way in the business. Chris Jericho, Eddie Guerrero, people like that. That's not the first guy to do it. It's important to remember Roddy Piper's kind of the first guy to do it.
Yeah.
This is the time where he's getting into wrestling. You're talking about the NWA in '75,
Yeah.
right? This is not a place for guys his size, but he could talk, and they knew that. And his ability to deliver a promo, I think anybody, anywhere, if you're trying to get into the wrestling business, I think that you should study Roddy Piper's promos, because
Yeah.
he's one of the best promos in the game.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, just at the end, especially, I know I'm kind of jumping ahead to the end, but everyone listing off the different promos that he's done and stuff like that, the different catchphrases and stuff like that. Um, Probably the modern day Roddy Piper that everyone kind of considers as far as promos and stuff like that, and the way he carries himself, CM Punk.
Right.
He has stated that Roddy Piper was clearly his favorite.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of influences on, as I mentioned before, on Chris Jericho.
Oh
You
yeah,
know,
absolutely.
it's very clear that he was influenced by Roddy Piper, especially if you look at the way he acted in WCW in his early WWE career.
Yeah.
Um, where he was just trying, basically trying to get under everyone's skin. Um, Jericho is also a student of the game, like the same way that Piper is, and also a smaller guy that could talk and could get over and could read an audience and he could work them literally. He knew how to make them have the reaction that he wanted, and that is professional wrestling, folks. That is at the end of the day, that's
Oh
the
yeah,
brass tacks.
absolutely. And it's funny because they were showing, the NWA footage and stuff like that, the old Mid Atlantic footage and World Championship Wrestling and stuff like that. Before it was like actually WCW, basically. And it's funny because before the network officially went over to Peacock, I was actually watching a lot of old NWA and Mid Atlantic stuff. And I was watching like the studio wrestling. And first of all, I'm just going to say studio wrestling is some of the best stuff I've ever seen in my life. I'm just throwing it out there. Like I truly believe that. I love the fact that the NWA has brought it back with Billy Corgan and stuff like that. But like, I'm hoping a lot more places adopt that because I absolutely loved the studio wrestling thing. And Piper was never really like the best wrestler, I noticed. Like, he didn't really do like any technical moves or stuff like that, but he could talk then and stuff like that. And it was so cool to like see him. I saw him in a feud, I think, with I think it was Chief J Strongboat that he feuded with. And man, I was like, damn, that's like an actual rivalry right there.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I loved that. We're kind of jumping around a little bit here, but I loved that they showed his early days in WWE. I think my favorite part of the documentary probably is where they talk about WrestleMania 1, because I didn't really know a lot of the things they were talking about WrestleMania 1. Whenever you think about Hogan, or at least when I do, I immediately think politician. He's a guy who's always going to get everything out of the deal. He's always going to come out on top. He's always looking out for himself above the business, above the other guy. WrestleMania 1, it's kind of not that scenario, not entirely. I never knew that they, went with this whole screw job finish because Piper refused to go under. I never knew that.
Yeah, but I can totally see it.
Oh, I can too. And it's really interesting to me. And I'm going to draw a parallel from this. If this match went down today, it would have ended the way Hogan described. It would have been Mr. T, pin Piper, middle of the ring, 1, 2, 3, huge eruption from the crowd, right? That's how the match would have gone if it happened today.
Yeah.
If you look at WWE's competition in not now, not from AEW, but from let's say 2005 to 2000 to 2015, right?
But
Really, right. Their only competition during that era was TNA, and in TNA, it would have gone the same way it went at WrestleMania 1. And I think there's an interesting parallel there because there was so much in TNA where nobody wants to lose, right? The finish, there's never this point where like, okay, well, this guy's going to win and this guy's going to lose. It's always got to be this crazy screw job finish. WCW did it a lot too. And I think
ridiculous.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that pretty much everyone in the industry can look at the way that this finish was set and go, yeah, that was the wrong thing to do. But yet people are still booking stuff like that every single day.
Yeah.
And it's very clear what should have happened. And had that happened, I think history would be different. And Piper later in his life, finally agreed to that. He didn't see the big picture.
Yeah, no, he didn't. I agreed with Hogan.
Right. It's rare for me. Very rare for me.
I know, but I did agree with Hogan on this one. Piper should have let Hogan pin him in the middle of the ring, basically.
I mean, Mr. T should have pinned him.
Well, I thought Hogan said it was supposed to be him pinning Roddy Piper to basically further that feud and stuff like that. Or
well, in the documentary, so they couldn't have really furthered it if Hogan had pinned him. In the documentary, he says Mr. T should have beat him in the middle of the ring, and I agree.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, he should have, and it would have given Roddy Piper even more reason to go after and want to kill Hogan.
Right, exactly. That's where you get the building blocks are. But the way they ended it, and the way that Piper did business, or rather didn't do business, it's terrible. And that's kind of how everybody was back then. Everybody was kind of, at least everybody from the upper middle card to the main event was absolutely, I think, were out for themselves at the time.
I think the best analogy that I could come up with to describe how wrestlers should act when it comes to this stuff is, okay, well, look at the Marvel franchise. You have like the top celebrities being like the faces of the franchise and stuff like that. Look at Black Panther. Chadwick Boseman was pretty much the star of that, but Michael B. Jordan shined as well.
Right.
But Michael B. Jordan still got killed.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Get it?
It's the same concept. Yeah, I mean, it's just like, Josh Brolin as Thanos. Everybody knew that Thanos was going to lose eventually. It doesn't do anything to him. It's like, it's the same kind of concept, but there, at this point in time, in this old school mentality, the wrestling business was still incredibly protected. So, I can see where Piper's coming from to an extent. Looking at it from my point of view, obviously it's a shitty thing to do, but at the time, you're a kid who literally grew up fighting on the streets. You're a guy who's out here talking shit constantly all the time. And here's the thing about that too. I'll draw another parallel to today. You look at Samoa Joe's career in the WWE and how it went. He would come out and cut the best damn promo you've seen on the whole program. And, I'm going to destroy you. I'm going to go home and smash your wife afterwards. I'm going to go have a beer after that. Like, I am going to do all these things, and I am going to absolutely obliterate you. And then he loses, right? And eventually your credibility is gone, right? Because you come out here and talk all this trash, and then you can't actually back it up with anything. Piper was trying not to become that because he was talking more shit than anyone. And if he could not back any of it up, then he just becomes the sideshow, guy that talks. And there's a lot of that. I mean, look at Carlito's career in WWE. It kind of became that same thing. He had a similar segment to Piper's Pit. He would come out, Carlito would spit the apple on him, but then they would beat the shit out of Carlito every time. That's pretty much how it always happened.
Yeah.
And so he was trying to prevent that from going on. And in an era where the business is much more protected and everyone believes that this is all real, it's a different thing than it would be if he were to, have that attitude today, in which case he would definitely get fired.
Absolutely.
For sure.
And I mean, I get all that, but and you use the Samoa Joe analogy and all those others. This is a little bit different though when it comes to that. It's okay to lose in this instant because you are the bad guy. You are supposed, the fans are paying to see you get your ass whooped.
Right.
Because they hate you so much,
Yeah.
And so if Piper is going to be the most hated, well, then you're going to have to eventually lose to the big baby face, which was Hogan at the time.
Right. Everyone lost to Hogan. Everyone lost to Hogan.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you want to know something? It was probably this incident, which is why.
It definitely helped.
After this.
Definitely helped. So let's talk about him coming into WWF. So he's got, he's working his contract with Jim Crockett. Vince McMahon calls him on the phone. Hey, I want you to come up. He's in WWF at the time for 3 years. He's there from 84 to 87.
Mm-hmm.
87, he takes a 2-year hiatus. He comes back in 89. This to me is his prime.
Yes.
This run.
Completely.
This run where he's basically a babyface the whole time, but he's still himself. Once again, Chris Jericho, shades of Roddy Piper. He's still the same guy, but he's being cheered now. They can't get people to hate him. People love him so much. And, this to me, this 3 years, this is everything he touched in this time was gold. We reviewed the 92 Rumble. Go check it out. It's an amazing review. Had an amazing time reviewing that. He's the star of that entire event, I think, to me.
I would definitely say so. And then, of course, his match with Bret Hart at WrestleMania, which should have been Hogan and Flair as the main event, but this matchup stole the show. Like, that was the talk of WrestleMania, was that match after that Mania went off and stuff like that. And it was still a pretty good WrestleMania overall, and I'm sure we could go into that another day and stuff like that. But dude, this matchup and the promo he cut with Bret before the match and stuff like that, man, it was so good. Like, I was just like, this is wrestling 101. I don't care what anyone says.
Yeah. I mean, he picks up the IC title at the Rumble, which is his only time holding it, and then drops it to Bret at Mania, and it was absolutely it was the stellar show stealer match for that WrestleMania, and nobody remembers really much else from that WrestleMania. I think it was 8.
Show and Flair.
That's true. Very true. But this match is what people talk about, and I love that Bret Hart was on here. And Piper really passed the torch to Bret in this match, which is not a thing a lot of guys were doing back then. He kind of made Bret Hart in this match, and Bret Hart would be kind of the star of WWE for the next at least 4 years. You've got 9, 10, the match with Owen at 10, which is the show stealer at 10. And then up to him losing the title to Shawn at 12, right? That's the Iron Man match is 12?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for the next 4 years, Bret Hart is kind of, he is a huge star in WWF. Oftentimes, either the show stealer at Mania or the main event, and so he really passed the torch on to Bret Hart here and made him in this match. Like I said, that's not something a lot of guys are willing to do back then.
No, but it was awesome that Roddy Piper did that for him. And it was awesome to see Bret, see the way that Bret talked about him on this documentary. Because Bret, over the past few years, he doesn't talk the best about people and stuff like that in interviews. So when he talks about him and he talks about Austin and stuff like that, I mean, you could tell he really enjoyed working with those guys.
Yeah, agreed.
Because we know that even though he had good chemistry with Shawn, they didn't like each other.
Right.
And that's probably something that they're going to cover in his documentary, which I can't wait for as well. But yeah, man, I'm glad that they addressed this matchup though, because it really did. It was really that good. It made me obviously want to go back and watch it.
Yeah. I mean, they talked about his film career a little bit in this. Piper was in a lot of movies. They kind of, in the biography, they kind of make it seem like he was only in the one, but Piper had a lengthy filmography. You can look up his IMDb page. He was in a lot of stuff. He was in stuff from 1978 right up until his death. He had 2 movies that came out where he had a minor role and that actually came out after he passed on.
Yeah.
So very cool. He was also in a bunch of TV shows. He was in an episode of Walker Texas Ranger. He was just in a bunch of stuff. He's in an episode of Storage Wars, Cold Case.
Yeah.
Just very cool the amount of things he was able to go out and do. He had like a stand-up comedy routine, which I thought was fantastic.
Yes.
He's definitely somebody where I wish he was still around because I would love to go to a convention and see him. I think that he would have been an amazing panel to go to, panelist.
He would definitely be an amazing podcaster.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wish him and Bobby the Brain Heenan were still alive because they would both be doing a podcast.
Yeah, it'd be fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
So let me tell you about, we've been skipping around all night, so we'll keep doing it. The moment that really got to me in this, that had me tearing up, was WrestleMania 35 when his family comes to visit Ronda. And when she hugged his wife, that moment there just that got me. And I don't give a single shit normally about Ronda Rousey, but I loved her in this documentary, and I loved how much she respected Roddy Piper. That he was her favorite. She was really into him. They had the same trainer even, which was very cool. There was just a lot that she talked about, and that she really like honored his family on her big night at Mania, and I loved that.
Yeah, she respected him so much that when she knocked out, I mean, she literally beat the shit out of this girl in UFC. It was when she was the champ. I can't remember exactly who it was against, but she literally knocked the crap out of her. And after the interview, it had just been like 2 days or something like that since Roddy had passed, and she was like, I just wanted to say we lost a great man in Roddy Piper this past week or something like that. So she said, rest in peace, Hot Rod, and stuff like that. That was after an MMA fight. You could tell just how much she respected Roddy Piper, because, and it's funny, if you look at the two of them, she's kind of like him. I don't think she's obviously promo wise or anything like that, but she has that attitude about her.
Right. Yeah, agreed.
And it was interesting seeing her in the documentary and stuff like that, because at first I thought, are you kidding me? Is this going to turn into like a Ronda Rousey type thing? But
I'm glad it didn't.
Yeah, but it was still pretty good seeing her in it and stuff like that. And I will say this real quick about Ronda Rousey. People can say what they want to about her, but I will say that she probably had one of the matches of the year, her WrestleMania debut, because it's like you could just tell the crowd was into it. And I've always said that I don't care what type of match it is. If the crowd is into it, it's obviously a good match. You don't have to like have a star approval rating in order for that to be a good match.
Yeah, her and Kurt versus Triple H and Stephanie was fantastic.
Yes.
Just because she was so hot at the time, and I don't mean that in a like she was attractive manner. I mean it is in she was incredibly famous, world famous, and one of the most famous people in sports or entertainment, and probably one of the most famous athletes in the world at the time. Comparable to like Mike Tyson. At that time, at that point in time, she was on fire. So for her to come out of the MMA world to team up with Kurt Angle to take on Triple H and Stephanie, that was magic. That was great booking, and the way that the match actually went was incredible. I don't think anybody will ever forget that moment where she starts beating the dog shit out of Triple H in the corner, and he's like trying to block her and can't, and it was just a hilarious moment, the look on his face,
Yes. Well, to me, the greatest moment in the match is when she finally gets the tag from Kurt. And he reaches out and he tags her and shit like that. She comes rushing over to Stephanie McMahon, drags her into the ring, throws her into the ring, and you just hear on commentary, "Here comes Ronda Rousey," and Corey Graves just goes, "Call the cops."
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, that's perfect." And I think it was so good, and it was so anticipated because people knew she was a fan of wrestling, going back to her fandom for Roddy Piper and stuff like that, to she was just a fan of wrestling in general. So people were like, "Hey, she actually is a fan. How will she do in the ring?" Kind of like what is she going to do? And I always thought that she did a good job of wrestling her style and not being like everyone else, not trying to wrestle like a wrestler, because she's not going to do that. She's an MMA girl, type thing. And it made for some great matches. The ones with her and Charlotte were great. The one with her and Becky was not Becky. Sasha was great. So, and that's probably got to be because she watched a lot of Roddy Piper.
Yeah, I gotta say that as things kind of went on and the way that the 35 main event was built up, I really didn't like a lot of the promos that they were doing, where basically they tried to make it out that Ronda was like this really bitter, like MMA person who's like, pro wrestling's bullshit. I don't want anything to do with it. I'm gonna kick your ass for real, blah blah blah. And they just tried to make it this very like reality based angle, and I don't think it worked. As a matter of fact, I think it made Ronda and Charlotte both look really bitchy and unlikable. And I think that Becky looked incredible going into that and coming out of it.
Yeah, which, I mean, they were trying to make Becky look incredible, obviously, going into it. But I can tell you it was somewhat successful because, again, this is why I go back to it. All of this would have worked if it had just been Becky versus Ronda, because TMZ covered her versus Ronda, or I'm sorry,
Right.
Ronda versus Becky. They never covered Charlotte, but they played segments of Raw with Ronda and Becky. So I was like, when you've got TMZ covering you, well, something's working.
It was a big deal, but also, I think Ronda was right to take a step back after that, because like I really don't, I hope she doesn't come back. Like, it was very, I mean, I don't mean that against her. I mean, I've never been a fan of hers anyway, but other than, I really love what she did in this documentary, but she really, to me, when she left WrestleMania, it was like the creative team has nothing for you. They were 100% out of Ronda Rousey ideas. And I mean, that's kind of how it is. I think that her run is looked on favorably, but I think if she comes back, it will be terrible. I don't think they have anything for her.
Yeah, and I also just didn't think that they should have done the screwy finish at the end. It's like, no, Becky should have just beat her with the disarmer.
Yeah, I mean, and this is turning into a Ronda Rousey podcast, but
Gotcha.
WWE's thinking, hey, she's going to be a star here for the next 5 years. We have to protect her, whatever. But none of the 3 women that are in that match are stars. So here we are. Yeah, I'll catch some hate for that one later, but anyway, whatever.
Yeah, I'm just like, I disagree with that, but that's for a different podcast. But Roddy Piper is a star. We can agree on that one.
He is a star, and in 2005, he was actually inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame after, a rough patch with Vince McMahon after the 2003 HBO interview. It's crazy how different the Hall of Fame looked in 2005, isn't it?
Yeah, very.
It made me feel old to see like who was in the audience in 2005. Like Cena being there and stuff, and then I'm like, damn, man, that was a long time ago. Then I'm like, oh, damn, I'm old.
Yeah, that kind of set in with me, because I remember being like, I don't know if I was in high school or I had just gotten out of high school or something like that. But I remember when that happened, I was like, whoa. Like,
Yeah, I mean, I know I'm no longer the target demographic because 80% of the people I like have Hall of Fame rings.
yeah.
You know, when I watch the Hall of Fame now, it's not, you know, Bruno Sammartino being inducted, people that are before my time. It's Rob Van Dam and DDP and, you know, people that I watched, you
Yeah.
know, not only as a child, but as an adult, you
Yeah.
know. So, you know, it's like RVD was just defending the Intercontinental title on Raw every week, you know.
Yeah.
But that was, you know, over 15 years ago. So, yeah, I mean, Eric Bischoff going in, Kane going in. I mean, you know, that's most of the people that I've been fond of. You know, they're going into the Hall of Fame now. It is what it is. Um, but anyway, before we wrap everything up on this, you have anything else about the Piper documentary you wanted to touch on or talk about? I think Bruce Pritchard was useless.
What? Why do you say that?
Well, I just don't think he really contributed very much. As a matter of it, but I do want to talk about this. So you know how they had like the two like wrestling historians in this episode?
Yeah.
Were you not thinking? Because I was thinking the whole time. Why didn't they just fucking get Jim Cornette? I mean, I know why they didn't. I know why they don't. They don't want to bring any more attention to that man than he's already got. But like, I just feel like he would have just done such a better job than a lot of these guys that they had on here talking.
Yeah, I mean, he probably would have, but I don't know. I just like what I want to touch on is just, you know, I just don't think people realize, like, until this documentary, how impactful Roddy Piper was on the industry. He was one of those first guys, like, to break into the business that was not your typical huge, you know, big wrestler and stuff like that, especially in WWE. You know, he was a lot shorter. He was, you know, he was CM Punk size basically, but, you know, he could talk and he could still back up his, you know, word and stuff like that. He was the complete package. And he was one of those guys that could do both babyface and heel. He was obviously, you know, his best stuff was the heel. But I loved hearing also about the dog collar match, man. That thing was brutal back in the day, and it's still brutal like today. If you go back and watch that match, man, it's still, oh my God, it's still brutal. And the fact of that he was on what is considered wrestling's very first pay-per-view, Starrcade. He was part of that. And the fact of that he came back years later in 96, even bigger than he was at the time, and took on Hollywood Hogan of the NWO in one of my favorite all-time WCW pay-per-views, Starrcade 96, man.
Yeah,
That's just like how big he became.
we talked about that too in our top 5 list of non WWE
Yes.
pay-per-views.
Yes.
That was a great feud. You know, I kind of skipped over the WCW era.
Yeah.
You know, he shouldn't have been in the ring at the time.
I didn't realize that. Like,
Right. And that's the thing. You never realized it.
Like I never even noticed that as a kid or anything, or even watching it now. And then like that was something else I was going to bring up, which was the fact of, you know, even his kids in this documentary were talking about how he was beat up all the time. He had bruises everywhere. He had, you know, a different or something different was wrong with him. Like he had a broken shoulder. He had a dislocated knee or something like that. You know, like they talked about how hard it was for him being on the road. And you see, that's what happens when you want to become like the top in this business, when you want to become the top guy or you want to be in those top spots, you know, well, you're going to have to endure the road schedule. You're going to have to endure the interviews. You're going to have to endure like the crowds that, you know, hate you or love you and stuff like that. So
And they're
And
mindful of that stuff now. Back then, it was so much worse. You see guys now talk about being on the road all the time. You know, when Big Show was working a full time schedule, he had an RV with a giant California King bed in it.
yeah,
That man left the arena and went and laid down and went to sleep, and somebody drove him to the next place. That didn't happen in the Piper era.
oh, didn't
There
he
was
for Andre the Giant?
right. There was no, you're working 3-4 days and then you're off, and then you go back on the road. I mean, back then it was, they talked about like he would go and get a hotel room and rest, and then go home and spend a day, 2 days with his family tops, and then be gone for who knows how long. They
Yeah,
may see him once a month. And of course, you have to pay for your own travel to go back home.
yeah,
It's not like they were like, here's your driver, Mr. Piper. That just wasn't it.
yeah.
That's not how it
And,
was back then.
yeah, and think about this. When you go out there and you perform like that, your adrenaline is rushing. And it's not just it's you go out there, you come through the curtain and everything calms down.
No.
You've been out in front of that curtain many times. You get an adrenaline rush like no other.
Yeah.
And so like when you get that adrenaline rush, you can't calm down. Like it takes guys like, I remember one of the first wrestling things that I did. Well, not one of the first ones, but like when I performed for AWF and I was in a 30-minute Ironman match, I could not sleep till 5 a.m.
Right. Your adrenaline just goes and goes. And here's the thing too is at first, so your body eventually it's just like anything else, most drugs out there, alcohol. Your body builds up a tolerance to that adrenaline. And so, the first time that you're out there in front of a huge crowd and you have a match, at WrestleMania, for instance, his adrenaline was probably through the roof. That was far from his first match, but just saying that was the peak, right? He's out there in front of all these people. It's the biggest wrestling event that's ever happened. It's the first WrestleMania. It is the sea change in wrestling.
Yeah.
Your adrenaline's on fire. But every time after that, it takes less time to wear off. I can remember going out and I'll use a War Games match, for example, that I was in. You're out there for 35 minutes. And it doesn't feel like 35 minutes. It feels like 5 minutes because time is going so just fast while you're out there. It's boom, boom, boom. Everything's happening. You don't feel any of that shit at the time. It's 2 a.m. when you're stumbling in from, just being at Waffle House and, eating too much because the adrenaline's still pumping and you also don't know when you're full.
Yeah.
You're just hungry. You just know you're starving. And you get home and then all that shit wears off. And then you wake up the next morning and you feel all of it. And that's how it is. And this guy did, he did it every day. He probably did it 300 days a year or more.
Yeah. Well, also that, and I like that they touched on this, and they touched on this during the Stone Cold documentary as well. And I've even heard this from Ric Flair's documentaries, which Ric Flair was involved in this. Obviously, it talked about him and Piper being together in this episode. But when you're trying to become a pro wrestler, right? It's almost looked at like, even in the NFL and even for a regular job, like you want to be the best at that. And everything comes like second after that. Like,
Right.
Roddy Piper, he was a family man. He loved his family. But when he was involved in wrestling, no, that consumed him.
Right.
Kind of thing. And it's almost like it was so funny because, well, not funny like ha or anything like that, but it was interesting listening to his kids talk about it. And it's almost like they're not bitter and they're not angry at him for it. They get it.
No, we talked about it before. 2 of them have gone into the wrestling business themselves.
Yeah.
So I didn't feel like, I never felt that from the kids. it was really heartwarming to me that they talked about their father so fondly, and they talked about the business so fondly. It wasn't like, oh my god, I hate wrestling for what it did to my dad. I'm sure there's an element of that, but it seems like that's probably long gone. He passed away peacefully at home. He had a very successful career. He went into the Hall of Fame. I mean, obviously he was into a lot of substance abuse in his younger days, but I mean, as we've talked about a lot tonight, that was part of it back then. That's what
Yeah.
almost everybody was doing, unfortunately.
Yeah.
You
I
know?
mean, and those nights with him and Ric Flair, oh dear God, I can only imagine how much substance abuse
Jesus Christ.
with that. It probably looked like a Jackson Pollock painting with those two. Like,
Good God. On that note, I want to go ahead and wrap this one up. I want to say we are going to be covering, of course, all of these. The episodes left on the list, we've got Randy Savage, going to be amazing. Booker T, which we've already seen, and we're going to give you guys an early review. Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, Mick Foley, Ultimate Warrior. So we're going to be covering Ultimate Warrior twice in the next couple months. We're going to get to see what A&E has to say about Ultimate Warrior, and then we're going to get to see what the Dark Side of the Ring has to say about him. So that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'll be interested to see if like Dark Side of the Ring though focuses on a specific event with the Ultimate Warrior or something like that. Like it could be one of those.
Yeah, I mean it's possible.
I don't know.
I hope they talk about the fact that he wanted the Warrior Award to go to, and this pisses me off more than anything in WWE, and that's a high bar. The Warrior Award was supposed to go to like the people behind the scenes that you never hear about. It's supposed to go to like the ring crew and the light people and like the people working the production truck, people like that. And but that doesn't get them anything. And so now it's become a PR stunt. It just goes to whoever they can get the best PR win with, and that annoys me to no end. That they took what he wanted to be as a way for the people who are the unspoken people who make the WWE happen to give them a little spotlight, and instead now it's a publicity stunt, and I hate it. So I hope they talk about that.
That might be. I am very like, dude. I think this is the first time because there was even episodes in season 2 of Dark Side of the Ring that I was like, I don't really want to cover that. And season 1, there was just some stuff where it was like, this is a unique story. I get it, but I just don't really care. Not to sound heartless or anything. But this one with Dark Side of the Ring and this Legends series, which this Legends series has just been incredible so far. I'm looking forward to literally everything coming out of both like things. This is going to be great. I can't wait for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's going to be fantastic. Yeah. I'm really excited. Before we go, I definitely want to give a shout out to Superhero Homies. I'm going to be returning to that soon. I'm going to do some stuff for their Patreon. They just put out a review for Mortal Kombat. I listened to it today. I greatly disagree with it. Anyway, I want to give a shout out to them. I want to give out a shout out to Suplexes and Microphones. Little birdie whispered in my ear that they are going to be coming back soon and doing an interview of, let's just say, international renown. That's all I'm going to say about it. That being said, Caleb, thank you for joining me for this review of the A&E Biography Legends. That's a mouthful. A&E Biography. It's technically Legends of Wrestling. That's a long title. Anyway, the Roddy Piper episode, which we both agree, fantastic. Thanks for joining me here each and every week.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me, as always.
And as always, this has been an Evolved Review.